The work changes you. Main Responder is here to help you decide how. This is not another podcast about headlines or war stories. It is about the people behind the badge, the turnout gear, the headset, and the uniform. Join Elliot Moya for honest conversations about leadership, resilience, health, identity, and the realities of a career in public safety, with practical ideas for the job, home, and the long haul. Search for Main Responder wherever you get your podcasts. Follow the show and listen today.
Feeling stuck in the middle of your career? The Mid-Career GPS podcast helps mid-level professionals navigate leadership, office politics, networking, interviews, and their next career move. Across more than 350 episodes, host John Narrell and his guests share a weekly dose of practical guidance to help you stop feeling stuck and start moving forward. Search for the Mid-Career GPS podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Follow the show and listen today.
The story that built your success? Maybe the story that is burning you out. Not because there's something wrong with you, but because the beliefs that helped you become successful, like, I have to be the strong one, or if I don't do it, it won't get done, and everyone depends on me, can quietly become the very patterns that leave you exhausted. On the Trust Tax Investigation, we're discovering how these stories shape the way we work and lead. Then on October 15th, comedian Merritt Khan and I invite you to rewrite your story. The podcast helps you understand the story you've been living. Rewrite Your Story helps you choose the one you'll live next. Learn more at rewriteyourstoryevent.com. Welcome to the UnCeiling You podcast. I'm Dr. Natalie Luke, your host. And since July the 20th, we've been conducting what I've called the Trust Tax Investigation. We started with a question. How can someone who is successful, capable, and trusted end up being so burned out? In week 1, we looked at when success becomes the trap. We saw how being dependable, capable, and willing to take responsibility can slowly turn into doing more than your share. You keep delivering, so from the outside, everything looks fine, even when it's costing you. Then in week 2, we asked, why does this happen? We looked underneath the behavior at the expectations, the identity, the chronic pressure, and the nervous system. We began to see why high performers don't simply wake up one morning and decide to overwork. The pattern develops over time. Eventually, what is unsustainable can start to feel normal. Then in week 3, we widened the lens to look at how the organization supports burnout. Because burnout isn't an individual problem. When dependable people repeatedly step in, solve the problem, absorbed unfinished work, or compensate for unclear ownership, the organization can begin to rely on the workaround. The work gets done, but the underlying problem doesn't get fixed. And that is where the trust tax becomes expensive for the people, operations, and the business. So now we've reached the most important part of the investigation. What do we do about it? This week is about breaking the cycle, because once you see the pattern, you have a choice. You can examine the story underneath it, the story being, I have to get it all done. Everybody depends on me. I have to prove myself. I can't disappoint them. This is what leadership requires. Instead, you ask, is this story still serving me? And is it keeping the entire system stuck? This week, we're going to explore what happens when we change the story, change the behavior, clarify responsibility, communicate differently, and build systems where trust doesn't mean one dependable person has to do it all. We've investigated the trust tax. Now it's time to start replacing it with trust, alignment, and sustainable results. Today, I'm talking with Catherine Lang-Cline, who built and sold a multi-million-dollar company and then wrote The Rules of the Game for Women in Business. Catherine helps us explore how to break the trust tax by stopping the pattern of quietly taking on more, advocating for the values we create, and giving ourselves permission to step forward instead of proving our worth through how much we carry. Let's get started. Hi, Catherine. Thank you so much for being on the UnCeiling You podcast. I'm so happy you're here.
It is my absolute pleasure to be with you today and with your audience.
So you built a multi-million-dollar company from scratch over 20 years, then sold it. Most people, they'd coast after that. But instead, you wrote a book. What happened that made you feel like you needed to write the book?
I think what I found out is that after I had sold the book, I did miss a lot of people that I had run into before. And some people would come up to me and ask, Catherine, and I mentioned I was working on this book that was like a totally different subject. And they said, well, I think what people really want to know is how you did it. How did you get in the room? How did you shake the hands? How did you get, on the boards and win the awards and things like that? And I'm like, oh my gosh, well, that'd be an easy book to write. And I had thrown that idea out with a couple other people. And also I was mentoring people as well a little bit. And I was finding that I was repeating myself a lot with some of the things that I said that people should do. And I'm like, you know what, if I put this in a book, then everybody's going to know, the secret, if you will, if that's what it is. And then people would also know too, like the ones that I would mentor, I could either hand them a book or reach more people if they could just go to the store and buy them. Kind of like I couldn't quite leave knowing what I knew. I felt there was just a fair amount of intel that would help a lot of women out there.
Okay. Thank you for doing that. Now, you talk about the rules that women didn't realize they're playing by. And before you figured them out, what did following the wrong rules actually cost you?
Well, the rules that women follow, because this is how we are born and how we're trained, is to always be polite and to be humble and to be just ever so thankful for everything. And, any opportunity we can have, just be thankful you've had that opportunity, sort of thing. And I was finding that was not getting me anywhere. I would enter rooms and I would, kind of present myself in a way that was just, kind of, shucks, thanks for talking to me, or I'm not worthy to talk to certain people because I haven't earned it, if you will, or I'm not on that same level. I don't have, as much as they do, like a company as large as they do. So why would they even talk to me, sort of thing? And what I realized is that men were playing by different rules, and men, they are raised differently to, be a little more rough and tumble. But what I was discovering is that since men started business first and have been in business much, much longer than we have, they kind of set up the rules as almost like a big sports arena. And once I realized that they're all playing like using sports terms, they have scorecards, and they have coaches, and they have teams, and they have huddles, and they have, they want to know where the puck's going at all times, sort of thing. So all this sports terminology was really starting to resonate with me the more that I hung out with the guys. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm playing the game different. I'm playing like a spectator. I'm not playing like I'm in it. And that's what I totally switched, is like I said, women enter, kind of showing up maybe with ice skates on to the game, and then guys are all in their rugby clothes, and they're like, what are they doing here? They look cute and everything, but in their little skates, but they're not here to play. So once I switched all that whole mindset around, that's kind of where the code was cracked.
So walk me into the room. You switched it around, and you broke the code. What's one thing that you actually did differently? Like what was before and what was after? You talked about shucks, but can you give like a real story example?
Absolutely. Like prior, I would enter a room and just immediately look to see if there's somebody that I knew. And maybe I'd end up talking to that person the entire time. If it was a room full of people and I was just hanging out with the people that I knew, and which, is lovely. And I do have a strategy in my book on how you can, entertain those people and, kind of seek the other people out. But one person had said to me that was on my advisory board, and it was a guy that said, Catherine, you are the CEO of your own company. You have absolutely every right to walk over to any CEO in that room and introduce yourself because you're at You might have a smaller company, but you have all the same worries and concerns. And I didn't necessarily do that before. I'd introduce myself and say my company is, hi, I'm Catherine and my company is, versus, hi, I'm Catherine, I'm the CEO of this company. And once that veil was kind of lifted a little bit, I can walk into a room and talk to anybody. I don't have to make it a girls' tea party. I can go in and actually network.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Success opened the door. Burnout quietly followed you in. If today's conversation felt familiar, it's because burnout rarely begins with exhaustion. It begins with a story that says, I have to be the strong one. If I don't do it, it won't get done. Everyone depends on me. Those stories often create successful leaders, but over time, they become invisible patterns that keep responsibility routing back to you until success is feeling heavier than it should. That's exactly what we're uncovering in the Trust Tax Investigation. The podcast helps you understand the story you've been living. Rewrite Your Story helps you choose the one you'll live next. On October the 15th, join comedian Merritt Kahn and me at Walsh College in Troy, Michigan for a transformational experience unlike any leadership workshop you've attended. Together, we help you recognize the story shaping the way you work, lead, and carry responsibility. Decide which parts still serve you and release the ones that no longer do. The workshop helps you see your story. The comedy helps you let go of it because you don't have to abandon your success. You simply need a story that lets you enjoy it. Learn more and reserve your seat at rewriteyourstoryevent.com. That's a really good example, for sure. And I could see where you're saying, hey, I'm with such and such company really downplays the fact that you're the CEO of that company.
Right. And that was the one thing that I learned very, very early. I went to an event and I had business cards made and they were all, cute and everything. And I handed them to someone and he says, oh, it says, and here that you're the director of sales and marketing. And he's like, I thought you owned it. I said, yeah, I do. And he goes, well, why aren't you the CEO or the president or something? And I'm like, because my business partner was basically the director of, of the talent that we were dealing with. So we were like, I guess we wanted to be humble and modest. Like, we could be directors of our own little departments over here. But once I got back from that event, I said we got to throw away these cards. We had to do them again. we switched it to where I was the CEO and she was the COO. And that's how people would get my card and remember it. And it's such, again, not to keep referring to this, but it was such a game changer to hand it to somebody. And then they knew that they were talking to one of the top dogs in the business versus somebody that was just a part of a boutique little business. This is a startup. It's just me and my friend, and that's how I would hear a lot of women introduce their company too and just say, it's just small. It's very niche. It's a little boutique. And I'm like, oh, how girly. The guys want to know that there is some, force behind that service if they want to use you. So you can't say it's just me. What happens to you? If I give you all this work and nobody's there, and how do I know that the work's going to get done? So we always presented ourselves, much, much larger than we were as well.
Oh, good to know.
Yeah, some people would just say, like I said, a lot of women would just, it's just this, it's me and I've had it for 10 years. And, they slip and say, I work from my home. People don't need to know that. They don't. They need to know what is it that you do and what you're an expert in, and you can handle solve whatever problem they have. And that's what they want. And just kind of taking that stance and really being behind exactly, we know what we're doing sort of mentality. That is how we got, especially to the larger companies.
Yeah, so I do own my own business, but I also am a full-time employee at another company. And it's funny because I feel like I've taken ownership of both. And so when I talk to folks about the company that I work for, like my company, blah, 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 blah. And they're like, do you own the company? And I thought, I'm talking like I feel like I have ownership. for the women that are in corporate, what are some of the ways that they should step up and be bigger than they are? What are some of the things they can do there to really present themselves as powerful?
I think a lot of it just really comes from just the confidence that you can state your expertise in. There's some women that I know that work for large banks, and they will talk about how, their customer service is like some of the best in the business or things like that. Or they will say, I've been in banking for 15 years, or I've been, doing this. They talk a lot about their expertise that really elevates them versus, hi, I work for a bank, or, I've been with this bank for 5 years or something like that. And I always tell people to take all the credit for everything. So say, for example, maybe you were a bank teller while you were trying to get through college and then you got into a big bank. I would definitely count the years that you were a bank teller. I mean, hand-to-hand combat with the customers counts. So include that. For me, when my company was staffing and recruiting for people in just the marketing space. And, we started that obviously saying, oh, it's a very, very niche and very, because it's so easy to say that because we really want to specialize in that. And we've been doing this for like 2 years now. I had 15 years experience in this space. So when I started introducing that to the conversation, I was doing this for 15 years and I decided that there was a better way to do this. So now I help other companies find exactly what they need because I know exactly what they need. I lived it,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a much bigger ownership of what you're doing and, really sharing those expertise and the years of experience that you have, that you really know what you're doing. That's really great. And, rather than saying things like, we as a company do all these things, start focusing more on what your specializations are. My specialization is this. And that really starts setting you apart from other people too. The thing about, using the same example with banking is there are, thousands of banks out there. So what makes yours special? What makes yours, the place that people want to use and to work with? So really hone in on what that specialization is too.
Got it. So just going back to, how women are brought up and to be nice and to be polite and be reliable. And sometimes that reliability is the thing that got her promoted in the first place. And it makes her valuable. But talk about how that mindset can also make her stuck.
That actually can come from a couple of different directions, because sometimes you don't get promoted because you're so good at your job that they don't want to ever worry about it. Well, if we replace her, how do we know it's going to be as good? And what happens sometimes too is like men get a little more anxious and they will say, I've been doing this for 10 years. When do I get promoted? Where a woman will just keep piling on. More responsibility. They need me here. And it's so fun to be needed. And, it's so warm and I'm taking care of people and stuff. But at some point you have to think about, well, what do I get out of all this hard work too? Am I preparing myself for my future growth, for my financial growth? A lot of women get really lost in that responsibility part, and I hate to use a term like, our maternal instinct is a real thing. We want to make sure everybody is cared for and everything is running smoothly, and we're the peacemakers. But sometimes we have to push back and say, what, I've done a lot for this company and I have some numbers to prove it. And here's how it's grown. And here's how I have contributed to the bottom line. And I feel that I either need a raise or a promotion. And if you truly believe this and it doesn't happen, be brave enough too to just say, maybe somebody else will appreciate this.
For the past 4 weeks, the trust tax investigation has been following a pattern. A capable person becomes what others can depend on. More responsibility follows. They adapt. They compensate. They find ways to keep everything moving. And because the work keeps getting done, the pattern can become almost invisible. But this week, we're not just investigating the pattern. We're asking, how do we break it? And what we're hearing from our guests is breaking the cycle. It doesn't mean caring less, achieving less, or becoming less dependable. It means doing something differently. It can mean communicating for connection instead of trying to get everything exactly right. It can mean stopping the need to prove your value by how much you carry and advocating for the value you already create. It can mean separating your identity from being the person everybody needs and developing others instead of continually stepping in. And sometimes it happens in a single moment when you notice yourself about to please, perform, stay silent, or take something on that isn't yours, and choose differently. That's where rewriting your story begins. Because the story may say, I have to do it. They need me. It's easier if I just take care of it. But when we change the story, we change the behavior. And when enough behaviors change, we begin changing the system. So see the story, change the belief, set the boundary, build trust, lead differently. That's how we begin replacing the trust tax with trust alignment and sustained impact. Now, let's get back to the conversation.
Talent, too, you have to promote yourself sometimes. And I would be in jobs and I would be stuck and there'd be like no end to when the promotion or raise or what have you. And I would start looking for another job while I had a job, which is the best time to look, and find something that was my next step up. So yeah, you have to, again, just kind of be your biggest advocate or cheerleader on your own career.
I really love the perspective and how you frame that. It's very clear, it's very crisp, and it's consistent. And I keep thinking about one episode I had with a lady who is a poker player.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, poker diva. And she talks about negotiations using poker techniques. And one of the things she number one, she says, you don't bluff in work you just don't lie. But, it kind of harkens back to what you said. Go ahead and start looking and then say exactly what you just said. So I think pairing these two episodes together is a powerful 1-2 punch for that woman who's absorbing unglamorous work, feeling like, oh, I'm responsible, so I am good, but not reaping the rewards of it.
Right. And it's how men play the game as well, where let's just think of like a baseball team. If you're a great player on a team and you never get to play, or be promoted to a larger league or something like that, you have to make a choice. And that is essentially what they do. And maybe you move to another team and there you're really the rock star. Everything that you did for this other company was not really appreciated. You can move somewhere else where it is and get paid for it. And again, I can never emphasize enough for women to really think about their financial futures too, because there's women that I would know that would have businesses, for example, and they would be done and they would just close. Or they would be done and maybe set it up as an ESOP or something else. And then you start running the risk of losing money too, so it's really thinking about when I reach, I'm working really hard basically, and I need to have some reward at the end of this rainbow here somewhere, and always kind of thinking about that as well. And not always about that giving that we tend to fall into when it comes to not just our businesses, but other businesses and things like that.
Well, I don't mean to beat a dead horse, but I'm going to anyway.
Let's beat it.
Let's beat it, baby. So when a talented woman keeps absorbing the unglamorous work, keeps showing up for everyone else, keeps being the reliable one, who in the organization is actually benefiting from that? And is that woman aware of it?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that there's a lot of women out there that, they just, using maybe in a role where you're somebody's assistant. You love helping that person so much and watching them grow. There is seriously nothing wrong with that. As long as you are appreciated, compensated for the more work that you do and your loyalty and things like that. So you don't have to necessarily, conquer the mountain if you don't want to, if that's not where your comfort zone is. I think everybody is definitely capable of doing that. But I do have run into some women who's like, I want to go so far and that's going to be enough. Well, again, just make sure that you're getting everything that you deserve versus just being on that constant giving track or absorbing more and making other people shine. I mean, people know that there's always that one woman on the team that I don't know what we would do without you. Is she being compensated?
Yeah. Yeah. So if you could go back to the version that you were, where you were just figuring it out and you're figuring out the rules, what would you tell her to stop doing immediately? Not reframe, just stop.
I think it is stop playing small. You have any growth or opportunity you have is totally in your control. And you can pull the reins back as much as you want because you're afraid to charge forward, but you're also the one that can also charge forward. And you really don't have a whole heck of a lot to lose if you're taking chances like that, like trying to make the right connections. I mean, I think people are like, I couldn't possibly be on stage and do a presentation or be in a panel or something like that. Panel discussions are so easy. If everybody asks you to do that, do it. However, people are always afraid to do that because they're like, well, what if I don't know something? What if I, fall? What if you do? What if you do? You know what happens? Nothing. Nothing happens.
Except for maybe you entertained a few people.
Exactly. Just play it off, people they're all humans watching you. And actually it makes it more memorable if you do something like that. So don't let that sort of fear stop you. You're not going to pass out. You're not going to do, you will be perfectly fine. And that's a part of that charging ahead process is, just really going for those opportunities too. Like for me, like I just felt like when I started, going back to your question, is that I was playing just really, really small, at least at the very, very beginning. But at a certain point, I decided, if we're going to do this, we're going to get back into some of the companies that we used to work for, which I can always encourage a lot of people to do too, because I worked for, Fortune 100 companies before starting a business. So I'm like, you know what, we're going to get them. By the end of the year, they're going to be a client. And I kind of made this my own personal goal to make that happen. And if I didn't think like that, if I didn't think big that we could tackle these huge companies, then nothing would have happened. I could have easily have just stayed very small where it was safe and comfortable. But once you got a little taste of that excitement, you're like, oh, let's see who else we can get. And it was just starting to just kind of factor in, then it was like, how big do I want this versus, how comfortable can I make this for myself and for my employees?
Mm.
Which is lovely. Again, I think that's a lovely trait that women have in business. Some of the companies that I know that people, they always win awards for, happiest employees and things like that. That is super wonderful, but that doesn't necessarily create growth or move your company forward if you're just a lovely place to work.
Yeah, it's forging forward, having a mission, having a vision, and challenging yourself. For sure. So what is the hardest rule for high-performing women to follow? The one that feels like it's wrong before it feels right?
I would say interrupting people in meetings, because that is such a hot button for women sometimes where they get interrupted in meetings. But I'm telling you that this is the way the game is played, because if you watch what I did, I would observe other men doing this. They would interrupt each other all the time and didn't think anything of it, and it wasn't done necessarily in a hostile way. But just, they just would start, slowly start talking over each other. The one person would let go and then the next person would go. And I'm like, this also is very much the way that a game is played. Because if you think about basketball, we have assists. You're closer to the basket, so I'm going to throw it to you. And sometimes someone just zooms in and steals the ball. And you're like, wait a second, I want the ball back. So you can have that opportunity to go get it back. There are ways that women can do it that have a little bit of softer touch than how sometimes men will do it. Because I think what women need to understand is that whoever has the ball gets the score. And they're going to try their hardest to score. So if you set up a nice little thing, they're going to take that ball and they're going to run with it. If that's the case, kind of remind them that you assisted on that a little bit. And you could say things like, you know what, thanks for taking that. I'll taking that to the hoop because I think I set that up for you really well, or something like that. You can, kind of incorporate yourself back into that idea making process. And what I find out too is, and I have this in my book too, different ways that you can conduct yourself in a meeting where you can come off still as a very, very strong participant without having to interrupt if that is just truly a pain point for you. But I'm just saying, just give it a minute. You'll notice that that's what people do. What I like to do also is when there are people in the meeting and they're not talking, I will ask, did you want to add to this? Because I think sometimes people are afraid to speak up. Or you could just say, would you agree with me, so-and-so, just to kind of incorporate things. And I also do this too, because this also makes you a great team player, is if somebody else has a great idea, reinforce that. It could be some guy who's like, here's my idea. And you're like, you know what, that's actually a really good idea. Uh-huh. And suddenly their chest puffs up a little and, you're on my team because you're my buddy now. So it's little subtle things that you can do. But like I said, it feels so wrong to interrupt because we are so, you know, you know, just instructed to just sit and wait your turn. And people working on things like, well, we have a talking stick, and I'm like, come on, we can have conversation, which is what it is. Meetings aren't necessarily an argument, but they're discussions. And
Yeah.
I would always find myself too just sometimes not get enraged, just because I think about, okay, this person has their opinion, I'm going to let them get through it, and I'm going to I'm going to hop in and I'm going to disagree here. um and that's perfectly fine, because that, again, is how it's played.
What are some of the other gems that you feel like high-performing women will enjoy in your book?
Well, I talk about the power of having champions and cheerleaders. Again, sticking with my sports theme, the cheerleaders are the people that are around you and they literally just cheer you on. And we have to always have those people around us, because sometimes when we are on a track of really great growth, or we step into that space where you now own a business, you do start alienating yourself from people that you normally would hang around with, because they don't own a business, or they're not growing exponentially like you are. And if they start turning into naysayers rather than cheerleaders, then you have to start spending a little less time with them and working, more closely with people that are willing to say, good for you. You deserve this. I know you can do it, things like that. That's who you need to have. And the champions are the ones that actually get you in the room for places. And those are people that you can meet and befriend at networking events. I would sometimes work with them, in organizations or things like that I belong to. And I would say, somebody at this company I'm really trying to get into. Would you mind doing an introduction? They are perfectly fine with that. The cheerleader I like to talk about, the champion I talk about the most is somebody who I had worked with in an organization. She just kind of knew me, that I was running a business and doing, pretty good at that time. And she told me that I am going to, you're going to be on a committee for the chamber here. And I was like, what?
Say what?
I think I'm ready. And she's like, you are. And I already gave him your name. And I was like, okay, well, I guess if you say so, I'm going to do it. So I did. And it was fantastic. And I got to meet a lot of people, and I was definitely qualified to be there. And then she said, you know what, I'm rolling off. And she was the chair. And she goes, I'm going to nominate you for the chair. And I'm like, okay, well, this worked the last time. So I said, sure. And what that allowed at that point is that whoever was ahead of that got to be on the big board for the chamber. So then I got to hang out with all the people that run the energy companies and have all the larger things. But if I had really put my foot down and said, oh my gosh, no, I'm not ready, oh shucks, it would never have happened. It would never have really made a change. So when I like to tell people too that, when these champions see something in you that they know you're ready for, I want you to speak for my group. I want you to join this board. I want you to, be a part of this. Believe them. You are ready, and just take that chance, that they're right, because we kind of get caught in our own world and we never feel like we're ready. We're kind of doing this little two-step of, do I jump? Do I jump? I'm not sure. They're there to shove you right off that cliff.
Yeah.
Guess what? You had a parachute the whole time. You didn't even know it.
This is so apropos because my daughter actually is studying abroad in Taiwan, and she's studying Mandarin, and she's had 2 years of Mandarin she's going to have a minor in Mandarin, and then her major is in biomedical engineering.
Oh my gosh,
what a great combination. But she's so excited to be there. And today was her second day of class. And she's like, oh my God, Mom, I was not prepared for this. It's so hard. And I'm like, you can do it. And she goes, okay, I have a 4-point plan. I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this, and I'm like, you are your mom's daughter. You go, girl.
Plan is an amazing thing for sure, and I think we need to kind of do that sometimes when we do maybe walk into that room, you're like, oh, wow, what is happening here? Then you just, take a half a step back and be like, all right, I have to come up with my own strategy, come up with my own playbook on how I'm going to manage this. And yeah, it's exactly that. I love that she did that. And that obviously you're seeing that yourself in that too.
Yeah. I'm like, you're going to be fine. Remember, it's going to be tiring until week 4. And then week 4, it's like you take off.
Exactly. And we all, like, through our whole life, will have moments like that. And for her, I'm hoping that she'll remember that going forward, like something else large will happen. And she'll be like, you know what, I was able to slay that dragon. I'm on to the next one, and it's amazing though how much the world just kind of cracks open once you do that.
Yeah, that's so fantastic. What do you want a woman who's listening right now, the one who's already in the room and trying to prove herself, and she's exhausted? What is it that you want her to not only know, not only do, but to actually give herself permission for by the time this episode ends?
Well, again, I'm going to refer to like what it's like to maybe run onto the field of like a big game or something like that. Some, people have been practicing and practicing and practicing, and now it's game time. Take that deep breath and start running. And you might have to, I don't want to like necessarily use the term fake it till you make it, but you sometimes do have to put a game face on and be like, all right, I'm here and I'm going to make the most of this opportunity, and I'm going to get as many names and and I always refer to it as make as many friends as possible while I'm here, versus saying like, well, I need to collect, business cards or what have you. I like to say that I'm here to make some friends, because I think that resonates a lot more with women, trying that rather than trying to, collect people like collecting cards or something like that. We like to make relationships and friendships and things like that. And that is what really also propelled me to go forward too, is I would go into the room and approach every single person as potentially being a new friend, a new helper, a new cheerleader, a new champion. And I would do the same for them. Like if there's anything I can do for you, you let me know. Eventually it does come around. You're like, oh, I can't believe they actually called me for this. But it is about, you are tired, but like sometimes you have to go, all right, it's game time. We're going to go in there and we're going to win this round, this one round. And then you go home and take a nice relaxing drink and bath or something. But just know I got to get through this. And once the game's over, then I can, take my shoes off. But we're thinking about it in a little bit of like spurts rather than, or like sprints, if you will. It's probably a better term than thinking of it as just a whole big thing you have to kind of attack. It's like just on one step at a time. And this is the game today. You can't go from, being a rookie player to the World Series. You got to go, game after game after game after game. And those series are long before you get to the end. Those seasons are long, but you just keep showing up, giving your best in these little increments, and people will eventually start taking notice. And then you can, like I said, you can be tired later. That's how I would always feel.
Got it. Well, thank you so much for being on UnCeiling You. How do people find you?
They can find me on LinkedIn, obviously, at Catherine Lang-Cline. You can also go to my website, which is catherinelangcline.com. There's no dots or dashes in that. It's straight through. There's also a link there for how you can get my book. There's a link there to Amazon and Barnes & Noble, but you can definitely go to any of those places directly. The book is The Rules of the Game for Women in Business. And like I said, it was kind of what opened up my eyes and as far as how I could be more effective in this ever man's world that we like to compete in.
There you go. I'll have links in the show notes as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for all of your wisdom for writing the book, and I am looking forward to reading your book.
Thank you. I really, really enjoyed our discussion today.
Thank you. About 4 weeks ago, we started this investigation with a question: how does success become a trap? And after these conversations, I don't think the answer is that high performers simply need to become more resilient. The trust tax showed us something more complicated. It can begin when a person proves dependable. People trust them with more. Extra responsibilities become normal. And because the person keeps getting the work done, the organization may never see what their success is concealing: unclear ownership, unfinished work, broken processes, poor communication, or responsibilities that keep routing to the same people. Eventually, the workaround becomes the way the organization operates. The person pays through overwork, lost energy, disengagement, or burnout. The organization pays through rework, higher costs, turnover, lost capacity, and the problems that remain hidden because someone keeps compensating for them. But throughout this investigation, we discovered something underneath all of it. There is often a story keeping the pattern alive. I have to get it done. Everybody depends on me. If I don't step in, who will? I need to prove that I belong here. Leadership means caring more. These stories have helped us to become successful, but they can also keep us and the people around us stuck. And that is why the trust tax investigation leads directly to the Rewrite Your Story event. On October 15th at Walsh College in Troy, Michigan, Merritt Kahn and I are bringing this work into the room for a full-day leadership experience, followed by Merritt's live one-woman theatrical comedy show, Optimistic Personality Disorder. Makes me smile every time I say it, because understanding the pattern is only the beginning. At Rewrite Your Story, we're going to see the story that's driving your patterns, changing the beliefs that keep it going, and setting boundaries to clarify ownership, building systems of trust instead of systems that depend on someone continually rescuing them, and ultimately learning how to create results without burning out the people responsible for producing them. The workshop helps you see the story. The comedy helps you let it go. And maybe that's the most important thing this investigation has shown us. You don't have to abandon your ambition. You don't have to stop being dependable. And you don't have to care less. You can rewrite the story that says your value comes from how much you carry. You can develop other people. You can share responsibility. You can build trust without becoming trapped by it. And you can lead in a way that lifts others and releases you. Rewrite your story, break the cycle, lead differently. I'd love to see you and your team on October the 15th at Walsh College in Troy, Michigan.